Right before you is the leader of the opposition for today in the House, Honorable Inomi Shabari. What the government is doing, they're actually deterring from their principal aim as stipulated by the Constitution of the government of Uganda. They intend to privatize the prisons, but they have absolutely no plan on how this will be effected. They have no action plan, what policy they are going to use to effect that privatization. That is a loophole in their policy of privatizing the prisons. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the government was talking about better health conditions and better conditions for the prisoners. They are trying to convince the entire House that the prisoners should get a luxurious life after committing crimes. Are they therefore encouraging people to commit crimes to enjoy luxurious lives in prisons? That is a question they should respond to. Should people commit more crimes because at home they don't have better conditions, just like the private companies will provide to them in prison? Are you legalizing criminals? That should be responded to by the government. Ladies and gentlemen, the status quo apparently, we have federal prisons. What are federal prisons? These are prisons funded by the government, monitored by the government, and also governed by the government. Federal prisons are in place, and what is our stand? We intend to maintain the status quo that I've just stated, because we believe the government has the mandate to look after the prisons. The prisons is under the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The Ministry of Internal Affairs is a government institution. That means the government is running away and escaping from their principal role according to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. They are actually lessening their burden. Since you accept to be the government, stand firm and execute your duties in all the ways possible. Don't run away from your cause. This is why you put into power. This is why people put into power. And this is why we're rejecting it, because we see the loopholes in your policy. Dear ladies and gentlemen, and all the honorable ministers, honorable MPs around, the effectiveness of private companies and organization is not certain. The government apparently has succeeded in ensuring safe custody of criminals such as terrorists. These are people who are a threat to national security. But after privatizing these prisons, there is no guarantee absolutely that the private companies and organizations will effect or match up the same degree of effectiveness just like the government has done apparently. That is why we strongly oppose the issue of privatizing prisons. Ladies and gentlemen, I go ahead to tell you that the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, which is the supreme law of the state, under the Act of Uganda Prisons Act of 2006 that was passed into law, gives the prisons 10 principal roles that they should effect. Now, when the government is in charge and totally in control of these prisons, they will feel mandated and they will feel obliged to respect all the principles of the prisons. But the moment they privatize these prisons, there is no guarantee absolutely that these prisons, the private companies, will actually feel the same. They have the same obligation like the government to privatize, to execute all the principles of the government, of the prisons. Ladies and gentlemen.
Information granted.
Granted.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for granting me this information.
Please resume your seat as you take the information.
I would like to inform the Honorable Member and Leader of Opposition that even private security companies, before they came into existence, it was a big question whether they will be effective or not. But after privatizing these security companies, we have security now in people's homesteads. So it is not in order for the member of opposition, the leader of opposition, to say that we have no guarantee that privatizing these prisons will cause us a problem. Thank you.
Leader of opposition, you may want to respond to that. I'll give you 30 seconds to do that.
Thank you very much. The issue of private security organizations is totally out of context when we come to the discussion of privatizing prisons. So that is a far-fetched example, and we cannot dwell on that. That's because the other one succeeded. This will also succeed. It's not stipulated anywhere. That's why we are against the privatization of prisons. You can, if you have any evidence that since the other one succeeded, this will also succeed, present it to the House. It is not part of your plan how you're going to ensure this is privatized. Do you seek a national referendum to seek the consent of all the citizens?
Your time is up.
Will you amend the Constitution? Thank you very much for your time, dear honorables.
Thank you very much. That was Honorable Barre Ainomugisha, representing the constituency of St. Henry's College, Tovu. Thank you very much for your submission, Honorable Member. Allow me now to invite the Honorable Betty Anywa, who represents the constituency of Kitugum Municipality, to submit on behalf of the government side.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, members of this august House. On a day like this, when we are talking about privatization of prisons, I want to draw the attention of colleagues that prisons are not entirely places to punish people, because there's a number of cases for people who go in prison. Others are still held there as suspects. Others are already condemned. We need to privatize these prisons so that we classify well. We are supposed to actually rehabilitate those who are still suspect or serving light offenses. And therefore, if we, as a government, we privatize it, we are going to look for good people who can counsel them, who can rehabilitate them, and we can classify and put money where it is demanded. We have problems with, as a government, on the situation in prisons. They are over-congested, they are fifi, and here we are treating Ugandans as not human beings, mindful of those who are still held there as suspect. Therefore, when they handle it as a business-like, we expect better service, better handling of our suspect Ugandans, leave alone where we can treat those hardcore differently. And the most important thing for me as a mother of this country, in prison, there are suspects who are being held together with children who are innocent. Can you just imagine, honorable members, that these children are serving a sentence with their mothers while they are innocent? But if we privatize it, then they will have a better attention to ensure that these children are not treated as prisoners. Schools and then their welfare and their rights as children is being catered for. But if we leave it and handle it as if everybody in prison are criminals, hardcore, that's when we miss the point. Besides, honorable members, the funds allocation from government, the envelope needs a lot of school, education, education, health. When we go and partner with the private partners, we ease on that. And
do you take it?
Yeah, take it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I would like to ask, we, as the members of the opposition side, we would like to ask the members on the proposition side, you have a plan to rehabilitate the people who are in the prisons. You have a plan to privatize the prisons. You are not giving us a time frame. What are you You are planning to do something. You are not giving us the time you want to do something in. You are not giving us the ministry that is going to fund you. You are not telling us more about it, and we really need to know this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable member. Right honorable speaker, I would refer the honorable member on the information on the iPad, where the government has a full paper indicating the details when we are having our plan and the budget allocation. And because we are ready, right honorable speaker, that's why we have come and presented here. I will kindly refer the colleague to read details on the iPad and submit.
I am sure the honorable member on the opposition side has taken that and referring to it. I want to give the opportunity now again to the opposition side to come and respond to some of the arguments advanced by the negative side. And I think the Honorable Luyombo Abbas, who represents the constituency of Iganga Secondary School, is ready to submit. Okay, I'm told the Honorable was asking a question. Unfortunately, he's asking the question after the Speaker has resumed the seat, and that may not be possible to be taken now. But I think the question can come in the course of the submission of the next Honorable from the government side. But for now, let's have Honorable Maruch Sajid, who represents the constituency of Mayenga High School.
Now, I have often wondered why those who desperately need help are the really ones who don't know where to seek help from. Like the affirmative, dear ladies and the gentlemen, hitting back to the resolution, this House would privatize prisons. The debate is on to why we should privatize prisons or we should maintain. As the negators, we say we shall maintain the status quo, which depicts that the apparently federal prisons owned by the government, monitored by the government, operated by the government, and actually non-profit. Whereas, hitting back to what they're supporting, privatizing prisons. Private prisons are owned by private sectors, and dear ladies and the gentlemen, are only for profit benefits. That is what they believe. Now, hitting back to what they're standing as, the first affirmative clearly came and told us there's over-congestion. Dear ladies and the gentlemen, hitting back to the question of why are prisons in place? Why are prisons in place? I think they do not know that prisons are in place, they're actually correctional institutions. So while over-congestion is there, it's acting as a lesson for the crime committed. Now, if they're talking about releasing them to the private sectors, giving them a luxurious lifestyle, will they have learnt a lesson? Relax. Will they have learnt a lesson? Will they have learned prisons are correctional institutions? Will they have learnt a lesson? Or actually, now prisons, to them, privatizing prisons, they're going to promote what prisons are promoting.
Order granted.
All right.
Order. Please resume your seat, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I raise on a point of order. The Honorable colleague holding the floor is assuming that the prisoners being congested is just a way of keeping criminals outside the circulation. Meanwhile, it was clearly stated that until court pronounce you guilty, you are just a suspect. It can be him, her, or somebody else. Is the honorable member in order to allude that all those who are in prison are guilty and they need to be held as prisoner? Is she in order?
I'll make a ruling on that one. The Honorable will come and make a clarification whether she actually generalized or meant those that had already been convicted. She'll make that clarification.
Now, dear ladies and the gentlemen, I think the affirmative, the government is forgetting why the Judicial Service Commission is there. It's the very body which is consenting people who are victimized to enter the prison. So which guarantee do they have that the innocent people are there? Now, heading on, they're talking about dividing the budget as the government. It hits to our logic. Dear ladies and the gentlemen, the cost they're trying to reduce is one. Now, how illogical is that? First of all, as the government, they're saying private owners, hitting back to the definition, they're only profit-oriented. That is what we mean. Now, hitting back to the cost division, they're planning to divide costs as the government to use in other sectors. But dear ladies and the gentlemen, to attract your attention to this, private sectors actually demand the costs for operation, which calls for more costs which are not even initially there. When I know you are reliant on me, the government is initially reliant on the private sectors.
1 minute.
The government is initially reliant on the private sectors. When the private sector knows that I am being dependent upon something, let me hit back to the example. If I'm the only one with an MTN airtime here of 500, I can decide to sell it at 10,000 and people will still buy because I'm the only one. Now, if I am the private sector and I'm demanding for the costs of operations, my budget, I will tell you 10 million, relax. I'll tell you 10 million, but yet in reality it's 5 million. So they're actually increasing the costs because the government will have to pay. Moving on, they lack intellectuality as the private sectors. Now, dear ladies and the gentlemen, why are prisons there? We are the negators. We believe prisons are correctional institutions to maintain regulation of crimes crime rates in Uganda. What guarantee is there when we privatize these prisons?
Your time is up, Honorable Member.
On a conclusive note, we believe that if you privatize prisons, what guarantee do we have that these private owners shall maintain or regulate the crime rates which are apparently increasing in Uganda? If they give us the guarantee, we decide.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I think this time will allow me invite the next speaker on the government side, the Honorable Herbert Edmond Ariko, I think was standing up on a certain point, and let's welcome Honorable Ariko, Soroti Municipality Member.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to thank you and the honorable members of the August House. Mr. Speaker, Herbert Edmond Ariko, Soroti Municipality, Minister for Internal Affairs, where the prison services falls directly. Mr. Speaker, I would like to appreciate the submissions made by my colleagues in the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to inform this August House that the mandate to design, develop, and execute policy direction for government agencies and ministry rests with the government in power. Mr. Speaker, what is the purpose of the prison services? Mr. Speaker, sir, prisons exist first and foremost as a reformatory facility. 2, they exist as a deterrent measure. 3, they exist as a means of taking away criminal behavior from society. But last and not least, Mr. Speaker, sir, the prison services exist to enable government provide corrective action to persons that have been found errant and need to be reintegrated. Mr. Speaker, sir, with that in mind, we must therefore look at the aspect of the burden in terms of the Charter of Physical Responsibility of Government. Our honorable colleagues asked us if we have a plan. Yes, the government of Uganda, under Vision 2040, the National Development Plan, as well as the Charter of Physical Responsibility 2016-2020, have thought out a specific plan in which we reform the non-core functions of government, prison services being one of them. Why do we want to do this, Mr. Speaker, sir? Mr. Speaker, government hopes to reduce the cost of administration in terms of running prison services between 10 to 15% of the current cost of administration. This is because once privatized, there will be more innovation and efficient management of prison services. We know that government employs over 30,000 prison officers all over the country, and this has effect on the wage bill. We also know that the facilities of prisons require capital investment in terms of construction of buildings.
Do you want to take the point? Information?
Mr. Speaker, what point is that?
Information? We'll take that as information, not inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, sir, our rules of procedure do not provide for a point of inquiry. Mr. Speaker, the rules provide for a clarification.
It says
but
it's a point of information.
A point of information. Mr. Speaker, I take the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please come over and submit.
Honorable, I want to get some I'm giving you some information. Having made it clear to the House that you are privatizing because you want to reduce costs. You employ over 30,000 people, so the wage rate is high. And now you have forced the opposition to work on the assumption if you are to recruit more in the army, police, you will not manage to pay them. So at the end you are going to set up private forces, private police, and at the end we are going to have a private state. Are you implying that in your state so far?
Honorable Member, I want to respond to that. The Honorable thinks you're going to form a private state, consequently.
Right, Honorable Speaker, I am sure that the Honorable Member should have decided to school himself on the operations of government. Right, Honorable Speaker, with due respect, We have what they call the core functional areas of government. Indeed, no government would privatize security. But I said here, Right Honorable Speaker, that prison services is a non-core function of government. It is not classified as one that would jeopardize the strategic interests of the country. Right Honorable Speaker, what we are looking at is not simply making profits as the opposition seems to insinuate. Mr. Speaker, sir, what we are looking at is increasing on the efficiency of service delivery. We would like to see that when we send people to prisons, it is a purpose to correct their behavior so as to reintegrate them in government, in the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know that prisons should not be
Honorable
a place...
Member, do you want to take the information?
Honorable Speaker, if my time will be compensated, I will take the information.
I will compensate you.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be gracious to the Leader of Opposition that he may.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Honorable. I seek to inform you that apparently rehabilitation is ongoing by the government, and therefore it won't be any new innovation by the private companies as you're emphasizing to the House. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Member, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Government of Uganda, Mr. Speaker, sir, has had entities that are non-government government entities, and yet they operate as semi-private. They are not typically profit motivated. For instance, the National Water and Sewage Corporation of Uganda is partially government owned and also owned privately. But we all know that water is the cheapest utility that you can find in this country. So we should not focus simply on the profit motivation, but that is not how we will develop a country. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to give a further argument which government has looked at. Mr. Speaker, sir, way back between 1900 and 1918, yes, prisons services had been operated by private entities. At that time, it was reported that in a number of countries where prison services were privately managed, most of the prisons, the post-prisons inmates came out when they were better reformed people with more skills. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to conclude my submission. I know that my honorable colleagues from the opposition usually does not like government to be hard, and they interrupt. Mr. Speaker, I was giving a point in terms of former inmates becoming the epitome of development in terms of coming out with skills and education, because the prison services then provided them opportunity to go to school. They provided them with opportunity for development of their potential and skills, so that when they came back, they had the requisite skills to go back as positive members of society. Mr. Speaker, as a ministry, I would like to request this august House to work with us, to work with the government, because we have a noble duty to make Uganda a better country. Mr. Speaker, as His Excellency the President has said, our agenda is to push Uganda into a middle income status by 2020, and this cannot be done when we continue doing things in a little bit of a rudimentary way. As government, for us in power, Mr. Speaker, I wish the honorable member of the opposition would allow the minister to conclude his submission. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move.
Thank you, Honorable Herbert Edmond Ariko, Soroti Municipality, also Minister of Internal Affairs, on the government side. I have deliberately been generous with my time for the government side because they are outnumbered and I thought doubling their minutes would be a good idea. So don't wonder why the government side is having more time to submit. But for now, I will invite another member of the opposition side, and that is the Honorable Luciba Andrew Kelvin. He has not indicated which constituency he represents. Nalia SS Namugongo constituency. You are welcome, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, sir, and the whole August House, today we come to discuss matters of development and interest. At a time when we want to achieve middle income status and privatization is the only option the government is offering, let us look at what privatization has brought to us. When we privatized Uganda Electricity Board, what happens is the cost of electricity increasing. What does this mean? Where electricity costs are high, we have no investors. Now where is the middle income status coming from? Let us look at what they are presenting. Mr. Speaker said they argue out that prisons are too congested. They do not look at the root cause of the congestion, but they opt to offer a solution to congestion alone. We know that prisons being congested means there is a lot of crime going on. And where they do simply want to offer a solution to congestion, they are indirectly telling us, let crime go on, for us we are ready to have all criminals in the country at any cost they want. These are matters of national interest. We question the effectiveness of private organizations. Mr. Speaker, sir, why you have terrorists that are on international levels, how sure are we that these private prisons are going to be competent enough not to be corrupted to make any mistakes? Assumably, we have a suspect detained in there as you await trial. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is the question we present to them and the baseline of our argument. We, as the opposition, we question one, the effectiveness, and two, the whole idea that let us have more crimes as long as we can accommodate prisoners in self-custody, and which self-custody we are not sure of. Mr. Speaker said look at Vision 2040, but the issue of crime is a matter of national interest, and crime currently increasing. We cannot push it as far as 2040. This is a matter of national interest. Logically, this August House would, I say, be disrespected to push the issue of handling criminals as far as 2040. Mr. Speaker, sir, they come and talk about the rehabilitation and they look at things like education, but it should be made aware to them that even in the prisons that exist that are not privatized, there is education. For example, in Makere, we have MOBs offering education there. So the whole idea of rehabilitation, we would task the government to remold it into the current prisons, but not look at creating private prisons as the solution. We, as the opposition, stand in still to bring to you the very big cause of the inefficiency of private organizations. And where I want to achieve the middle income status, let us look at developing the government organs and not look at business as the sole cause for us to follow. Where you look at business, looking at business, they say that these private organizations are incompetent. When we try to, when they mean by, what they mean by privatization, they are not clear whether semi or fully. But let us look at, for example, education. We have private schools. These are the schools that have trained people. These are schools that run away from the government agenda. These are schools that close before the term is supposed to end. So we are looking at the discipline in the private organizations, and where we have a matter of national interest of crime, we do not trust the discipline of private organization. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I conclude, this House should all come together and look at the criminal status and not push it as far as 2040 as the government submits. Mr. Speaker, so that's our argument.
Thank you very much. That is Honorable Siva Andrew, who represents the constituency of Naria Secondary School, Namgongo. Because we have listened to 3 speakers on the opposition side, all representing constituencies in the central region, the next speaker shall be Awan Pajobo from St. College Ombachi, St. Joseph's College Ombachi, which is in West Nile. But that will be after the government side has submitted. You'll come next. So now let's have the Honorable Adeke Anna, who represents the national level and represents the female people who are young people. I don't know which ministry she's coming from.
Most obliged, Right Honorable Speaker. My colleagues from the government side and those on the opposition side, my name is Adeke Anna Ebaju, and I'm the head of government business. I have the privilege to be the last person from the government side to lay forth our views. And on basically, the crux of my argument is about the rights of prisoners. When someone is convicted to serve a sentence in prison, that does not take away their humanity. They are still human beings deserving of their human rights, which are inherent by virtue of being human. And that is espoused in Article 21 of our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda.
Will you take the information, Honorable?
I'll take the point of
the
information.
Honorable Leader of Government
Thank
Business.
you. And as you say, the article that supports the rights of the prisoners in Uganda, I'm now informing you that that's the work of the government, not the work of the private sectors. If there are bad conditions in prisons, if their rights are violated, privatizing them will not solve anything. It is the work of the government. Don't run away from your responsibilities. Thank you.
Leader of Government Business, please respond to that.
Right Honorable Speaker. Government does not take away rights, neither does it give them. Our duty is to ensure that we afford an environment for their protection and adherence to their existence. So that I am arguing about human rights does not mean we have totally absolved ourselves of our responsibility. We are cognizant of the fact that providing for the entire country will stretch our ability to meet the full ends of the different constituents who deserve attention. And some of them are the prisoners. For instance, we are providing free antiretroviral treatment to people living with HIV/AIDS. Uganda has achieved stability in the rate of increase of HIV/AIDS. We are investing in that. So we need assistance to make sure that even the prisoners who are serving their sentence terms have their rights properly protected. And privatizing prisons will afford us such capacity. I'll take the point of clarification.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member from Government. She talked about rights of humanity, that being jailed does not take away your right of humanity. Neither does it take away the right of citizenship, as stipulated in the Article 1 of the Uganda Constitution. So I would like the Honorable to clarify, does that mean that they are running away from their responsibility of taking care of all Ugandans? After all, these criminals are Ugandans. So why do you want to put them in the hands of the private sector?
Right Honorable Speaker, these private prisons are still part of the criminal justice system. They are not operating on their own. We are licensing them and monitoring them to make sure that they are still under our ambit. The only difference is that it will be at an added expense. So I would like to inform the members on the opposition side that privatizing prisons does not mean that they are totally out of the criminal justice system. No, government is still in control, and we shall regulate that by licensing all these entities that are going to privatize prisons. Right Honorable Speaker,
Do you want to take any information?
I would decline that point of information. I still want to reiterate that privatizing prisons will enable prisoners have enjoyment, full enjoyment of their human rights, the right to food. We are not able to cater for all those who have special needs. We have diabetes patients living with diabetes who are in prison. They don't eat the average meal that we provide. We need to cater for them because we must protect their lives while they are serving their sentences in prison. So privatizing these entities will enable us also protect their rights which they are entitled to. Since it is a deterrent facility, it is not necessarily to punish them and take away their humanity from them.
You have information here? Do you want
I'll
to take it?
decline the point of information,
Okay.
Right Honorable Speaker. Someone mentioned about tackling the increasing crime rate. Right Honorable Speaker, the fact that we are actually having people in prison means that we are dealing with the crime rate as it is. The increasing crime rate. Our criminal justice system has not collapsed. The courts are sitting and they are sentencing people to serve their sentences. So we are still checking the increasing crime rate. Just having more prisons which are privatized does not mean that we have stopped to try people and to make sure that the police is doing its work. The Minister of Internal Affairs has adequately informed us that the police is still doing its work to make sure that the crime rate is handled. Also, there was a mention about the Vision 2040 being too far. This is a vision to give us a period within which we should achieve different aims. It does not mean that we are going to wait for 2040 to clock before we can tick off things off our checklist and say, now we have this. We just have a time period within which we have set goals which we have to achieve. Now, those goals can even be achieved in 1 year, and this is what privatizing prisons is trying to help us to do, to achieve as fast as possible what we intended to achieve in the next 20 years, to be able to do it in just a few years. I submit, Right Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to the Honorable Leader of Government Business. You heard her submissions. She argues that the Vision 2040 is just a vision, and the achieving and accomplishing some of the plans could happen even today, could happen even tomorrow, and not wait for Vision 2040 or the year 2040 to come. But let's get some more submissions from the opposition side. Still have a couple of speakers here. I said I will be inviting Honorable Pajobo Iduros from the constituency of St. Joseph's College, Ombachi, to come and submit.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. My name is Pajobo Idarus from St. Joseph's College, Ombachi. Now, I want the government side to understand what privatization is. Okay, setting these prisons in privatization means giving the prisons completely under the private sectors. And once they are private sectors, we understand that these private sectors are going to work in accordance to getting profits. Now, if they are going to move into the prisons and if you're going to privatize these prisons currently, are we not going to see that they are going to fight to get profits? And how are they going to fight to get profits? Ladies and gentlemen, now they are going to use the prisoners. In fact, they are going to exploit them to go and work in farms more than they are doing currently just to get their profits. Is that what we want for our prisoners? That is the question I'm posing to the proposers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at USA. USA has a rate of 90% of recidivism. That is the rate of reoffending. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we are going to privatize the prisons in Uganda, as in US, because most of the prisons in US are being privatized. If we're going to privatize them, we're going to have a rate of 90% of recidivism or reoffending. Now, if we're going to do that, the rate of crimes in Uganda is going to increase. After a short time, all Ugandans will be fought. Criminals are going to come in. Murderers are coming in. Rapists are coming in just because of privatization. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't take that, please. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me finish my submission. Ladies and gentlemen, currently we have at least a peaceful prison. Look into the prisons. Are there high problems that are rising? If the rate of reoffending of Uganda is only 32%, why should we fight for privatizing these prisons so that we receive the 90% of reoffending and have many crimes in Uganda? I think we should focus on better things other than privatizing these prisons. Ladies and gentlemen, they haven't talked of having less rehabilitations or no rehabilitations. I quoted them from one of their speakers. No rehabilitations in the prisons. But right now we have been debating about the theme, which is full of rehabilitation. But ladies and gentlemen, we have been talked to by some of the NGO owners, like the Advanced Africa, who came to Nalia essays and said currently there is rehabilitation that is going on into the prisons. And then if it is going on, what is the essence of privatizing them just to get the rehabilitation? So at this moment we should focus on better things. We should focus on better things other than talking of things that are already existing. If you're privatizing just to get rehabilitation, let me inform you that rehabilitation is ongoing into the prisons currently. So there is no use for us to privatize these prisons. Now, ladies and gentlemen,
1 minute.
Thank you. Currently, I think the madam talked about having the rights of prisons. Now, if you want to give the prisons to enjoy themselves in the prisons, when they go out, when they come back and commit a crime so that they can go back and enjoy again, we want them to face the hardship that is going on currently. It is not so high. That's why the human rights have not yet even set any arguments or set any accusations on the prisons of Uganda. So it is better for us to leave it in that way. That's why currently the human rights has not accused the prisons of Uganda. So if we are going to say we want to privatize because of the lack of human rights that is being followed in the prisons currently, I think that is a great fallacy. It is not going to work because the rights of the prisons have been given to them. The hardship that they are exposed to is to force them never to commit crimes again. And think with all this, we can all join this side and say, yeah, we have it. It's me, Pajobo Idarus, from West Nile, St. Joe's College, Jombachi. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have about 15 or 20 minutes on the clock, and we'll be able to wrap up this. But before, I know that all the members on the government side have submitted. However, there are a few questions the honorable member who just spoke raised, and I would like them to respond to these questions. He says, he raises one of the important questions of exploitation of prisoners. He argues that if privatized, the prison owners will actually use the prisoners to work on people's farms and maximize profit. How do you respond to that? He also raises the question of reoffending. He thinks that he picks a case of the USA where he argues that privatization has happened and there is a lot of reoffending going on and the rate of criminality has gone up, and he fears that if that is brought here, the same scenario could arise. He finishes by talking about shooting down your issue of rehabilitation. He argues that that is already happening in our prisons, and so what new thing is privatization going to bring? You want to respond to those?
Most obliged, Right Honourable Speaker. I find it extremely disturbing that our colleagues on the opposition side will argue that prisoners should be subjected to harsh treatment in terms of my argument of human rights, that they should not go there and enjoy themselves, and then on the other side complain about exploitation. I find it extremely disturbing because those are totally averse. If you're saying that prisoners don't deserve to enjoy themselves, then why are you against them being allegedly exploited? It doesn't make sense. But away from that, it will do our country a whole lot of economic benefit if these prisoners have their efforts tended to something of national importance, national value. You can't have prisoners just sitting there idly. Remember, you have to keep them in a confined environment so that they don't escape. So you can't keep them there sitting, doing nothing with their hands. There's an English saying that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So these are people who are locked within walls. They have nothing to do. They don't have literature to read. They are idle. Why not help them and give them physical activity? Let them work and contribute to national development. Let them go and build hospitals. Because after all, the country needs to benefit from their wrongdoings, and this is the only way. Let them go and build hospitals for us. Let them go and bring revenue to the country by working on people's farms. It would even do us a whole, because we would tax whoever is benefiting from the prisoners' labor. So it would help the country benefit. And also, again, human rights are inherent. Because someone has been convicted of a crime, he does not stop being a human being. You cannot say that a prisoner should not enjoy medical treatment because he has been convicted for maybe murder. Much as he's been convicted for murder, while he is serving his sentence, we need to preserve his life so that he serves his sentence while he's living, and he probably leaves prison a better person. We must remember, honorable members, that prisons exist not just to punish, but also to correct. So these people have to leave prison and come back to society. We must facilitate a process that will enable them come back alive. This won't happen if we deny them their human rights. Most obliged, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Leader of Government Business, for responding to some of the questions put across. If the negative side, okay, because I was going to say if the negative side feels the questions were not responded to in entirety, then we could find a way. But now,
Mr. Speaker, sir, Herbert Ariko, Sorot Municipality. Mr. Speaker, there was an issue.
Of Internal Affairs.
Yes, Mr.
That's
Speaker. There was the aspect of privatizing prisons becoming a measure that will increase reoffending. Mr. Speaker, that can only arise when we look at prisons as nothing other than correctional facilities. Mr. Speaker, the current state of the prisons institutions in Uganda actually results into building core criminal behavior in our people. Because as we speak now, the facilities are so narrow. There is overcrowding. The prisoners hardly have 2 meals a day. They survive literally on 1 meal because that is what government can afford. So at the end of the day, what kind of Ugandans are we building? So our argument is that because the ministry and the government of Uganda will provide regulatory framework, we will ensure that those that will be given opportunity of tender to run the prisons institution will adhere to certain minimum standards. And indeed, these minimum standards will be enforced. And how are these people going to break even? Mr. Speaker, sir, my colleague has alluded to the aspect of exploitation, but I want to give further information. Mr. Speaker, under the current regulatory framework of the Uganda prisons, for somebody to hire labor from the inmates, they should be paying 300 Uganda shillings per day. Of the 300 shillings, 100 shillings go to the inmate. So if we are talking about exploitation, what else is exploitation? So we are saying that on the contrary, the regulations that government will set aside for a privatized prisons institution should be such that an inmate is paid reasonably according to the operational labor market. That other than the 100 shillings that currently government puts aside for the prison inmate, we are saying that in our proposal as government, it should be a minimum of 5,000 shillings so that at the end of the day, the prison inmate, Mr. Speaker,
you want to take any?
Mr. Speaker, I am getting challenged about the application of our rules. Mr. Speaker, in Parliament, I expect honorable members to rise and catch the Speaker's eye. But honorable members are putting up their hands. We in the government are getting scared.
She has caught my eye, honorable.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission and the suggestion of increment in the amounts, in what is paid the prisoners for their labor in the name of exploitation. But I'm informing you that alone will increase the crime rate. Why? The unemployment in Uganda. The two people commit crime so that they go to prison and they're given that labor and they get that high income. Thank you.
Honorable member?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think I would like to request the honorable members of the opposition to take time and reflect on the difference between employment and hard labor. In prison, it is literally hard labor. I do not know how many people will voluntarily wish to go for hard labor. But nonetheless, government is not blind to the fact that we have a responsibility to create employment. Mr. Speaker, sir, for the information of the members on the other side of the House, government at the moment is piloting a project that is called the Green Jobs Project under the Ministry of Gender, where we are doing something similar. People utilize byproducts of agriculture, for instance, the weed, the remains after harvesting sorghum, millet, to reprocess those into materials that will engage people of semi-skilled and low skills to be able to be employed. So we are not blind to the issue of employment, Mr. Speaker, but for today, we would like to invite and enjoin honorable members to address issues to do with improving our prison services. Mr. Speaker, there was a question to do with rehabilitation of prisons is ongoing. Mr. Speaker, I know that the Queen's language usually comes as a second language. But Mr. Speaker, sir, with due respect to the members of the opposition, we are talking about rehabilitation of the individuals, change in mentality, psychosocial reconstruction of people that have been convicted for certain offenses. So we are saying that the prisons should be correctional facilities. That's the rehabilitation we mean. That when you come back there, from there, you must be a better and reformed Ugandan. Earlier on when I made my main submission, Mr. Speaker,
the rules are, honorable member, that you stand up and try as much as you can to catch my eye.
Mr. Speaker, I will take the information.
Okay. Information.
Thank you so much, the whole August House. Honorable Speaker, now you talked of something concerning rehabilitation. Now, these prisoners, they are part of Ugandan citizens. Government cares for them because they are part of Ugandan citizens. Government cares to change them because they are part of Ugandan citizens. Now, the government invests money in its own citizens. The government dares to pick money from the taxpayers' money and invest in these people. Now, a private company, ladies and gentlemen, what guarantee are you going to have that it is going to care for these citizens and give rehabilitation to them the way you intend? It is like you are setting goals and you want someone else to fulfill your goals. It is like a parent who has 10 children and one of them is misbehaving and you intend to give it to another family to change that child for you. And that is what the affirmative team and the government is aiming at. They intend to make their child the perfect person, but they intend to give it to another family who is going to change their child for them.
Honorable member, are you saying the government side is running out from their responsibility?
Indeed, that is what I'm trying to imply. These are children of the nation who misbehave, and they intend that someone else is going to change this child for them. And that is the rehabilitation that you are talking about. What guarantee are you going to have that the other family is going to care for this lost child? the way you care for them. Now, on the point of exploitation, you talked of these inmates working for 300 shillings a day, and they get 100 shillings a day. Now, these prisoners contribute very little to their feeding. The government contributes the rest of it. Now, this private company you are intending, it is going to employ people. Where do you expect it to get the money for employing the people? Because government picks this money from taxpayers' money, so this private organization, where is it going to get it from, if not the prisoners, and exploit them more? Thank you very much.
Honorable, that's a very strong allegation. I don't know if it is. You're running out from your responsibility. Leader of government business, you want to tell us more about that?
On a point of order, right, Honorable Speaker, you're supposed to maintain an impartial role here. So is it in order for you to start mentioning who has more?
Honorable member, the Speaker is in order if he made an inquiry. The Speaker made an inquiry. The Speaker wanted to know if the pre-current Speaker was actually meaning that the government side is running out from their responsibility. And I wanted the government side to respond to it, to tell us if that is actually what they meant. And I will still insist that the government side tells us if that is actually what they are trying to do. Are they running out from their responsibility? You have a point of order?
Yes. Now, thank you very much, Mr. Right Honorable Speaker. I would like to ask if it is in order for a pre-current Speaker to assume your duties and address you in such a manner. As the opposition side, we request that she be suspended for some minutes. Thank you.
It is certainly not in order to address the Speaker in a manner that is disrespectful or in a way that is unbecoming. However, for the Speaker to continue handling the House and be as impartial as they can, the Speaker will be forgiven. And also, as you see, they are disadvantaged in number, and suspending one of them would disadvantage them further. And the Speaker wants to create a balance, so we'll forgive the leader of government business. And invite Honorable Ashabahewa Vivian, Beranyanji Girls Constituency, to come and make a 2-minute submission. She's not here? Okay, Honorable Yombo Abbas is ready. Can we welcome him from the constituency of Iganga Secondary School?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I recognize the government.
Help him move a little closer to the microphone.
This is what we have to say. The opposition is completely rejecting what the state intends to do. We know very well. The question is, are you privatizing or you're retaining? They are saying they are privatizing. Reason, they can no longer satisfy the conditions that should be kept in prisons. Why? They don't tell us why. But I can address it why. They know very well the problems they are facing of corruption, but they claim they lack money. That's one thing we are starting to deal with. So, this is the great question of the day. Is privatization the solution, or dealing with the problem of corruption where you're losing money from? The solution is actually to improve conditions in prisons and you remain retaining them. Furthermore, they say that if you privatize, conditions will improve. And they told you here, they gave us instances of what has been privatized, like National Water and Sewage Corporation. Now let me deal with that clearly. Ugandans, do you know that now the free resource of water, you pay for it? Have you known that? Furthermore, I'm coming on that. Do you know that Nitil was a national company, but having been privatized, it's now weakening and completely collapsing? I want to inform you more that, do you know that the electricity which you produce here is privatized and now you pay for it expensively? So then, do you know how much you will pay for prisons when they are being privatized? That's what the state is leading us to, and they're not seeing that. They tell you, look here, if we privatize, conditions in prisons will improve. They say there isn't enough rehabilitation, but then there's rehabilitation which we believe they can only improve, and so we shall have better conditions in prisons when they retain them and improve on national security. Furthermore, the government says that it's our duty to respect human rights and treat prisoners rightly. But now this is the attention, I want to draw our attention to this, that in the modern society, as we have human rights, it is high time we state human wrongs. You get it? It is high time we state this. The person who was murdered, a rebel, such a person, you are saying, look here, this person deserves all rights of a person, and we want prisons like the ones you know in Holland, where these people have TVs to watch, these people have what, for us we are intending to punish these people. And when you believe we are going to go the modern way of the Europeans who are saying, you know, everyone has a right and we are going to accommodate such things. For us here now we are stating human wrongs, and the state must punish people for what they do. So deal with the prisons, solve problems in prisons, and remain with your responsibility. You are seeking to run away from your responsibilities. Since you can't satisfy them, because they have failed to solve their problems within the government, you believe you should run away and privatize, but you don't have a framework as to how privatization shall work. So indeed, you are planning that in case you fail in any aspect, you are going to privatize all aspects. So what does this mean? You have seen the current trend where you know people are being killed on streets, they are shot, people are rioting. So they will say, look here, you know the army is becoming weak. You see, we can't pay many of them, so let us create a private army such that we improve on security more. Because this is where we are. Their weakness is they have failed to execute their duties. So the solution of their failure is give the private people the responsibility of doing this. But the question is here, how many Ugandans you have that can build prisons and manage them? So this is what they are going to do. They are going to go in Asia, Europe, look for investors and tell them, come and invest in prisons, since Ugandans can't do that. And that's where the government is leading us to. And what are we saying as the opposition? We are saying, the government, don't run away from your responsibility. Remain with your duty. Correct the mistakes you have within the system. We know you have money to deal with these cases, but you, the very people, are taking away this money, using it wrongly, and since you can't address the problem of the issue of corruption, you think you should leave these people, then privatize and run away from your duties. We are saying we are not sure you can't guarantee the effectiveness of you leaving the prisons, okay? You can't guarantee national security again. And you are currently running away from your responsibility because we have seen privatization as a failure in the country. They cannot cite out anywhere where the government has supported privatization and it has been a success. It's nowhere. It has not been successful. So this is a clear thing that where we are leading to. They are soon privatizing everything, and you know, somewhere when the minister becomes weak, perhaps they will have a private minister anyway. It's because they are running away from their duties. So I conclude my submission by informing the August House tonight that the government should not run away from the primary responsibility they are meant to execute. They should uphold it. They have those powers as the state. We pay tax. The prisoners work. And that money, anyway, the money which prisoners pay, where does it go? And the government, we know they are meant to support prisons. So use the money prisoners. So actually, what the Ministry of Internal Affairs made it clear that they want to increase the money they pay to prisoners as they work to 5,000. So why don't you increase this money as you retain the prison, and some of this money goes into the prison treasury, and you just add more money to what you give to prisons, and you improve conditions than giving them away whose effectiveness we're not sure, and you're only escaping your responsibility. So your policy can't work, and we would request to go revise it and bring in what is better for national security and our country as Uganda, as you plan to achieve the Vision 2040, which you appear to be putting into problems.
Thank you very much, Honorable Yombo Abbas from Iganga SS constituency. The members of the front page here will certainly respond to some of the issues put forward, and this is how we are going to conclude this. The speaker is going to be so generous and edit the rules of procedure a little bit. I'll give opportunity to some of the members of the back bench to respond, to submit. We agreed that this side is the government side and this side is the opposition side for this debate. So I'll allow one or two people from the back bench to submit later after the front benchers here have responded to some of the comments put by Honorable Yombo. And after that, I'll put the question. Those in favor of prisons being privatized will say aye, and those against will say nay. And we'll see which side takes it. Okay. I'll allow the members of the front bench here to respond to some of the issues put up and make some clarifications where you think the member was not right.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am going to have a problem seeing how we get to the crux of understanding seizing a responsibility, delegating a responsibility, and running away from a responsibility. Government is not and shall not hand over its responsibilities. Government is only delegating a non-core function, but we will provide a regulatory framework. Our work is to regulate. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, I doubt, as the Honorable Member said, that we will go to Asia shopping for investors in prisons. Why would we do this? These are some things that local companies can do. And nonetheless, even if they came from out of Uganda, Mr. Speaker, the regulations will be there. I want to say something to do with the money. Mr. Speaker, currently, the 300 shillings is what is provided for in the law. And the 300 shillings, as it were, and as the opposition has considered, is far less than what government should put in to run the prison institutions. But what the honorable members on the other side should note is that government does not operate like a shop. So much so that when 300 shillings is collected as revenue, it straight away goes to run the prison services. There is what we call non-tax revenue. All this money must go to the consolidated fund and planned for centrally, because there are other sectors in the country that compete for the same resources. But that is why now we say that when the prison services are privatized, Mr. Speaker, it will then be possible that government will set a standard amount that the private investors, as well as those people who hire services of the inmates, will pay. For instance, as I said, if the 5,000 is paid, definitely the person running the prison's facility will take a certain percentage, and government will set another percentage to go to the inmate, which is definitely better than 100 shillings. But how does government gain from this? Government will provide a tax regime so that the investor pays a certain percentage amount, the consolidated fund, so as to go and support other sectors. Mr. Speaker, I want to enjoin my honorable colleagues in the opposition that what the current government, that the people of Uganda elected overwhelmingly, 63% of the vote, Mr. Speaker, that is not, I want my honorable colleagues to realize that we have a mandate to set up a good institutional framework under which, if they end up in government one day anyway, I don't know if they will, that they get facilities that will enable Uganda to operate at a higher level. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that we talked about the aspect of government spending a lot on administration in prisons. No privatized prison facility will have 30,000 prison warders and officers, because the investor will want to make it lean and efficient. And that is what we are looking for. That we would like to see that the cost of administration in non-priority areas such as prisons goes down, so that we put more money on education, we put more money on health. According to Abuja Declaration, Mr. Speaker, I'm winding up. Mr. Speaker, we need more money for health. And I'm sure my colleagues, even the Honorable Seungu, who has just been on the floor of Kalungu West, the Honorable Seungu was bringing a matter to do with corruption as the reason why we are privatizing the prisons. But he did not substantiate with facts. On the contrary, this government is at the forefront of fighting corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker. We have set the Inspectorate of Government in place. Mr. Speaker, we have other justice and law and order sector facilities. We are cooperating. Mr. Speaker, the honorable members, this is true. This government has the cleanest record when it comes to fighting corruption. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable Member and the Minister for Internal Affairs. We have just about 6 minutes on the clock, and this is how we are going to share this time. I am going to give strictly 2 minutes to the government side and 2 minutes to the opposition side, and then I'll reserve the 2 minutes to wrap up. So starting with the opposition side, any member, it could be the front bench or the back bench. And he said you stand up and catch the speaker's eye, and he caught the speaker's eye first. He did. You have 30 seconds to submit. Right there, you're a backbencher.
Press the microphone.
Press. When it turns red, you speak. Press once. Has it turned red? It has turned red.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by a quote from Winston Churchill that a government that has failed these people, there should be no reason why it is kept in power. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to your eye this fact that Uganda is a country, is a third world country, but most of the facilities are very expensive. Taking into account electricity, which was privatized, electricity is at a cost of $6 per unit. And in US, it is at $2 per unit. Yet US is a first world country. Look at this. It was privatized, but then it turned out to be more expensive. How is this going to help our country? There's a particular report in 2015 that was reported by the New Vision and other press units in Uganda, where prisoners of Gulu prisons were rioting for being overworked. My question is, if the government of Uganda can overwork its citizens, then what of the private sector? I personally have
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Let's have over there at the back.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. First and foremost, I'm Kagwa Agre from the constituents of Cornerstone Leadership Academy. I would like to notify the House at this moment that the government is not providing any solution to this House. They are saying they are going to delegate with regulatory measures to this prison service after privatization. But if you see Air Uganda and UBC that have been currently privatized, they have declined in status. Second of all, they are looking at privatization to private investors as if it is going to be a charity service to criminals. That means if they are going to allow privatization of prisons, they have to pay the private investors, because in this, private investors, they are not gaining anything from criminals.
Thank you very much for your submission. Okay, I'll take this one, and he did actually raise his hand earlier, so I'll take him as well. So you two, you and him.
Thank you very much. Balinda Edward, representing Igang High School constituency. I want to put it clear to the rest of the colleagues, just like one of the honorable members of our side, he said it very well, that the government should first of all look at the causes of crimes. If they come up and say that in prisons prisoners are congested and they are willing to privatize the prisons. I don't understand. Are you looking at solving the problem that's making the prisons to be congested, or you are telling the country that please, we can privatize and people are ready to invest? So
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now take the last speaker. Please help him turn on the microphone. Thank you. And please help him get closer to the microphone.
To affirm this to this house. Okay, to affirm to this house, the prisons are part of the security, and security is a core issue for this Uganda. So the government you are running away from your core value, therefore you want to put us into insecurity. You want Jamil Mkul to come and kill us? Another issue is that you have a bad record for handling corruption. In 2013, the president took the MPs to the State House over the issue of 69 billion, which were 169 billion shillings, which were taken by Basaja by his group. And we have never recovered that money. Katos money we have never recovered it. We have never recovered the money in the public sector, in the public service ministry. Therefore, you are bound to be corrupt, and forever we can never trust you.
Thank you. We are going to take, please turn off the microphone as soon as you finish your submission. I am going to take 4 from the government side, and I'll start here, 1. I'll take you 2, and then turn this side and take 3, and take the lady, 4.
Mr. Speaker.
The rest of you, please resume your seats and turn off the microphones.
Mr. Speaker.
When he finishes, then you submit next. Turn off the microphone, please, and resume your seat. Do the same as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the August House. Mr. Speaker, when you took over power way back in 1986, we have felt so embarrassed by the opposition due to the accusations and the allegations of the day. Mr. Speaker, the best reason why the opposition we are presenting today, we are saying with the government we are running away from our primary law. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring it to the consent of the House that we are the government today. All we are trying to bring is a better way of catering for our citizens, not a way running away from our law. Our law is just to create better societies for our citizens, not that we are running from our law. What we're trying to imply, our dear Speaker, is 1. We are trying to create a better plan in which our citizens can sustain. Mr. Speaker, the opposition came with a lot of allegations saying that there is no privatized company that has been successful. Mr. Speaker, look at what we have had. We have had the privatization of Commercial Bank, Uganda Commercial Bank, which is one big bank today. Mr. Speaker, what do we have to have a better banking society?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you very much. We shall take him now. Who did I select? I had selected the 4 people. Who did I select? The one at the back, wasn't it? Yes, I think it was the one at the back. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the opposition came here and affirmed that this government has promoted corruption. But my fellow government official came and affirmed that this government of the NRM is the cleanest, has the cleanest record in fighting against corruption. And I'm here to affirm that. We have the anti-corruption court. We have several members of the government that have been charged of corruption. We start with the UCC, Uganda Communications Commission, Kabakumba Masiko. We have Pius Bugirimana. We even have a public accounts committee in parliament that has both members of the opposition and members of parliament. And we even have Godfrey Kazinda, who has also been charged with corruption. So this government has the cleanest record compared to any other government.
Point made,
Thank you very
honorable
much.
member. Before we come to you two, and towards you and her, the gentleman from Nakasura constituency and her over there, but we don't have many members in this house wearing shorts. So I am going to allow the honorable member wearing shorts, I don't know which constituency that is, to make a submission. Please turn on the microphone. Yes, perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, if prisons are privatized, the workload of the government shall be reduced. But now the government is too fatigued with all those ministries. It has to leave some of the work to the private investors. So that work, if it's left, dear Speaker, there will be competition. And they will be struggling to see that the welfare of the prisoners is too good, so that they can win the favor of the government.
Thank you very much. The honorable member thinks government should go some of the roles. Let's hear from the member representing Nakasura constituency.
The opposition went on to say that they would maintain the current status quo, and the status quo is that there is 10% increase in crime every year, and there is 32% actually habitual offending. So, do we really think that actually this status quo of increase in crime has to be maintained? And that's why the opposition actually, we don't have to maintain the current status quo because it is bad. The government came up with an alternative on how best we can actually reduce even this habitual offending and actually reduce the crime rate, and that's why it has to go for rehabilitation. The essence of rehabilitation was to produce better citizens, and that's why we have to go for privatization, and privatization of the prisons, and privatization of the prisons actually would reduce the debt burden. You realize that actually
your time is up, honorable member. I'm sorry, but your time is up. Let's hear from her, and that's going to be our last speaker.
Well, thank you. I'm representing Igangese's constituency. Well, the opposition side indeed affirmed that the government has the funds. Yes, we have the funds, but then we have a lot of things to take care of. As we told you, there is education, there is medical care. So we cannot afford to use almost half of the funds or 3/4 of the funds on prisons. So we afford to give the part of the burden to the private sectors if they can give it to us. But we're not going to go on begging them. I'm sure they will be the ones coming to request. And now our resolution is, if they come, we shall give it to them. Please, opposition members, try and bear with us. That is the situation currently in Uganda.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of our debate. Let's give ourselves a big round of applause. And because this was a motion, the speaker is going to ask the question. And those in favor of privatizing prisons will say aye. And those against it will say nay. So as loud as you can, the speaker's ear will be caught and the decision will be made. So I now pose the question. Those in favor of the motion say aye, and those against nay. It looks like the aye have it. I think we shall have that administrative announcement. I think we'll be proceeding straight to the canteen for lunch upstairs. Somebody I think will be coming. Bernard, tournament director, where are you? Please come and guide us on what next. Let's give a hand clap to our honorable members who managed to stay around to the end. Hey, house adjourned.
Mr. Speaker, you get out first.
Do I pretend something? Okay.
Me too.
Honorable students, I request you to get up, please, and we go for lunch. We only have 1 hour, because by 2 o'clock we have to be here. So let us try to be a little quick, have our lunch, and then we get back for the afternoon session. We can take the pictures later.
Excuse me, sir, first. Oh, no, I'll come in.
Another one for me? Huh?
This, sir? Hey, take it.
You actually know. Side.
Are you through?
I want to spoon.
You're free. You're free. Wait. You're free.
Sir?
Serious 4G. My code. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Someone here.
The lights, just a moment. Yeah. Yeah. We are there.